Hello, book friends. Today I am here to do another author spotlight, and I am sharing all about one of my favorite comfort read authors, and that is, of course, Rosamunde Pilcher. Hello, I'm Jen, and welcome back to my reading life, and welcome to another author spotlight video. This is a series that I am doing where I am spotlighting some of my very favorite authors. I have already turned the spotlight on Susan Branch and Agatha Christie, and today I am here to chat about another one of my favorite comfort read authors, and that is Rosamunde Pilcher. I adore Rosamunde Pilcher. I can't remember how many decades ago it was that I first read The Shell Seekers, which was my first Rosamunde Pilcher novel, but certainly not my last. It is the book that caused me to fall in love with her. It is epic, it is sweeping, it is a family saga. There is love, romance, there is deception, there's some drama, but amidst it all is the strong central figure of Penelope Keeling, one of the most wonderful protagonists, I think, in all of the books that I have read. I just adore her so much, and if you have not read The Shell Seekers, then I highly recommend it. Rosamunde Pilcher was born in 1924 and she passed away in 2019 at the age of 94. That is a very long life to have lived. I am sure she saw many amazing and terrible things throughout her life, but her books don't focus on the big picture of the world. Instead, they focused on the daily life of her characters, of those domestic details, of love, of marriage, of friendship, of family, of all of the joys and complications that lie therein. And while she doesn't shy away from difficult subjects at times, she always does it with such a gentle hand. And I think you can be reassured that everything is going to turn out pretty all right by the end of a Rosamunde Pilcher novel. I think that you can open the first page of one of her books and just settle in for a cozy and comforting read. Rosamunde Pilcher was quite prolific. She wrote a lot of books and short stories, but she didn't really find success and acclaim until The Shell Seekers came out in 1987. So she was in her 60s when she first found herself an author on the New York Times bestseller list. But before that, she had written quite a few books already. She actually started out writing under a pseudonym, and she wrote some romance novels under the pseudonym Jane Fraser. They are incredibly hard to find. If you ever see one out in the wild at a decent price, snatch it up, because if you try to search for them online, you're going to pay a lot of money for a very small little paperback romance novel. I would love to get my hands on a few of them if possible, but she wrote 10 novels, romance novels, under the name Jane Fraser. They were published by Mills and Boon, and as I said, they are quite elusive these days, so if you happen to have one or you ever happen to come across one, definitely snatch it up. Then she did begin writing under her own name, and she wrote 16 novels under the name Rosamunde Pilcher. She has 4 short story collections and 2 nonfiction books to her name. That is quite a bit to have written in her lifetime. While I was doing a little bit of research on Rosamunde Pilcher for this video, I came across a really lovely interview with Rosamunde Pilcher when I believe she was in her 90s. It is on the Macmillan Audio YouTube channel. I will have it linked down below. It is a short video, maybe about 15 or 20 minutes, of her talking about her books and her writing, and if you love Rosamunde Pilcher, I highly recommend giving it a watch. Like I said, it'll be linked down in the description box below. She seems a charming and formidable woman. But enough about that. Let us get into all of the books. I'm going to share my entire Rosamunde Pilcher book collection with you all, and I thought we would start off with her big chunky novels that I think she is probably most well known for. Then we will go into some of her shorter novels and short story collections. And then at the end, I will share with you the 5 books of hers that I have on my TBR shelf that I have not yet read. I think there might be a few other books of hers that I haven't read either. Her 2 earliest novels that she wrote under the name Rosamunde Pilcher are out of print, and I can't find them anywhere. So If anyone has seen them or heard of them, I will put the titles here on the screen for you. So if you are curious what her very first two novels were. But let us start by going into her big four. We're just going to call them the big four, shall we? As I already mentioned, The Shell Seekers was her first bestseller. It is, as you can see, quite chunky, one of the big four. It's a fabulous story. If you've never read it, it makes for fantastic summer reading. If you need a book to sweep you away, The Shell Seekers will certainly do that. And then another of the big four is September, which I recommend reading after you've read The Shell Seekers, because there is a character in September who is from The Shell Seekers, and I think it's important that you get to know that character first in The Shell Seekers and then in September in order to see the character's full arc. But this story is otherwise not connected to The Shell Seekers. It actually begins in May and ends in September. So it again would be a great book to start in May. It would also be a wonderful book to read throughout the summer or in September or anytime. Rosamunde Pilcher is good any time of the year in my book, but of the big four, September is probably my least favorite, but they are so close in margin to each other that I still love this book and think it's wonderful and well worth a read. And then next is a book that I know is many people's favorite, and that is Winter Solstice. And I agree. Winter Solstice is a wonderful, wonderful story. We basically have almost like a found family, a group of characters who come together over the holiday season. All of them don't really have any place to go or anyone to be with over the holidays, so they all kind of come together. There is some struggles that they're all going through, but through connecting with one another, you just see how that friendship and family lifts them all up and brings them all together. And it just has such a wonderful, heartwarming feeling to it. It is a perfect winter read. I cannot recommend it enough. I know many people read this every winter, and I can get behind that. It is such a fabulous read. And then finally, the last book in the big four by Rosamunde Pilcher is Coming Home. And this is the only book of these four books that features a young woman as our protagonist. So Coming Home is almost really a coming of age story. In this book, we follow Judith Dunbar from before World War II, through the war and after it, and you just see her. She has a relationship with a family. There's a girl who she went to school with, who she's very good friends with, and so she spends a lot of time at her family's home, and you just kind of follow along with Judith and her story. I love Coming Home, and this is actually the only of the big four books that I have not reread. So stay tuned to the end of this video because I have a special announcement to make that involves Coming Home. So if that intrigues you, make sure you watch to the end. Those are the big four books. Let us get into some of her shorter works and short story collections. Although before I do that, let me show you my original copy of The Shell Seekers, which the cover is a little bit loose and the pages are quite yellowed. I won't ever get rid of this one because it just brings back such fond memories to reading this book for the very first time and falling in love with Rosamunde Pilcher, but the font is a little small for my eyes these days. I'm glad I have these newer editions to help my aging eyes continue to read Rosamunde Pilcher in physical book format. And then let's see, I don't really have these in any particular order, so I'm just going to go through them. First up, I have a bind up of two of her shorter novels in one, which is The Carousel and Voices in Summer. I also have this other edition of Voices in Summer just on its own. And I actually did a reading vlog of reading Voices in Summer last summer. If you're curious about watching that and seeing my impressions of Voices in Summer, I will link that in the cards and in the description box below, so you can check that out. I really loved Voices in Summer. It's probably my favorite of her shorter novels. I think the arc in it is really interesting. We're following a married woman who is going to stay with her husband's family. And then there is this anonymous letter that is received that accuses her of having an affair. And we kind of follow along with that story. But I thoroughly enjoyed this one. And then in the carousel, we are following Prue. She lives in London and she goes off to spend some time with her sort of bohemian aunt in Cornwall, and there might be a little romance that happens. It's been so long since I've read the carousel. I really need to reread it. I remember enjoying it, of course, as I enjoy all of Rosamunde Pilcher's books, but it definitely is one I need to come back to. And then her next shorter novel is Wild Mountain Thyme. Again, this is another one that's probably a close second for me to Voices in Summer. In this one, we actually travel to Scotland, which Rosamunde Pilcher and her husband moved to Scotland, and she spent, I think, most of the later portion of her life there. So it's fun to read about Scotland in this one. And of course, there is some romance, and there might be a little lord of the manor that we get to meet in this one. But yes, another really wonderful of her shorter novels. And then next up is Snow in April. And this one is about a young bride, and I feel like she's sort of having cold feet about getting married, and she and her younger brother end up taking off right before her wedding to go try to find their other brother who is missing. And so they head up to Scotland to look for him, and on the way there, the car breaks down and they end up taking refuge in this castle, and things kind of unfold from there. But this one, I have to say, I did feel like it felt a little rushed to me. The ending did. So this one's not my favorite of her shorter novels, but I mean, it's still a Rosamunde Pilcher. So if you're in the mood for something with a snowy, wintry setting, then Snow in April might be a good bet for you. But I do think you might want to read some of her other shorter works first before you get to this one, because I don't think it's the best example of her short novels. That is just my personal opinion. And then next I have yet another bind up of two of her shorter novels, and this is called A Time to Remember, but the two novels in here are The Empty House and The Day of the Storm. In The Empty House, we are following Virginia, and she and her two children are going for a much needed break by the seaside. So they're heading off to Cornwall, of course. And Virginia has had quite a bit of difficulties and heartbreak in her life. But perhaps it is time for a new love to come onto the scene, or perhaps it's an old love reignited. We shall see. But I very much enjoy The Empty House. And then we have The Day of the Storm, which is about Rebecca, and she suddenly finds out about a family she didn't know that she had, and she goes to meet them, and then she meets this young man, Joss, who is very much kind of been taken under her grandfather's wing, and, well, does love find the two of them? You will have to read and find out. But yes, I enjoyed both of these, though again, it has been a really long time since I've read them, and I am well overdue for a reread of these, but I very much enjoyed them. And then next is a short story collection that I absolutely love, and that is The Blue Bedroom and Other Stories. I actually have two different editions of it. I think I just couldn't help myself. But I loved every single short story in here, which is so rare for me when I read short story collections. I often find that, of course, as is natural, you're drawn to some stories more than the other, but I really enjoyed every story in here, and I highly, highly recommend this one. So when you finish all of the big four by Rosamunde Pilcher, I think this is a great next step for reading her, and then venture into some of her shorter novels. I feel like Rosamunde Pilcher really excels at either the very long novel or the very short story. So her shorter novels, I think, just aren't as strong as those two ends of the spectrum, but love The Blue Bedroom. Fantastic short story collection. And then last up are the few books I have on my shelf still to read by Rosamunde Pilcher. First up is Another View, and this one is about Emma. And it sounds like she spent most of her life in boarding school, sent there by her father. And then she also has this man, Christo, who had been her stepbrother. Sounds like her father had married his mother, and they were stepbrother and sister for a short period of time. And then maybe he's coming back into her life again. I don't know. I guess I will have to read it and find out. But if anyone has read this, let me know what you think of it. I need to figure out which of these shorter novels of hers I should read next. And then next up is Sleeping Tiger. And I'm actually really intrigued by this one because in that interview with Rosamunde Pilcher that I just mentioned, that's on YouTube, she talks about Sleeping Tiger, and it is actually set in Spain, which is unusual because most of her novels are set in England or Scotland. And so I'm kind of intrigued by this. It says, Selena comes across a photograph of the father she's never known, and she impulsively flies to the tiny island of San Antonio to meet him. The man she finds there will have a more profound effect on her life than Selena could hope for. So I don't know, this one might have to be next. Has anyone read Sleeping Tiger? What'd you think of this one? Might be nice to go off to Spain for a little bit. And then lastly, of the short novels of hers that I have on my shelf still to read is The End of Summer. I love this cover. It says, Jane is thrilled to accept her grandmother's invitation to return to Scotland after 7 years in California. Part of the attraction lies in seeing her cousin, Sinclair, for when they were children. Sinclair had been the most important person in Jane's life. Will the magic still be there? I think I need to read this at the end of this summer. What do you all think? So those are the 3 of her shorter novels. I'm not sure if I have another couple that I don't own other than those first 2 of hers that are not in print anymore that I have left to read. I think I've read almost all of them. And then lastly, I have this short story collection, A Place Like Home, which was published posthumously. So this was published after Rosamunde Pilcher passed away in 2021, I believe. And it says they've never before been published in book form. So I know she wrote a lot of short stories for like magazines. And so I have a feeling these might have been published in magazines, but never before in book form. So quite a few short stories in here. And like I said, I don't know, this is one of those books where I have been putting off reading it, not because I don't want to, because then I'll have read it. And do you ever do that sometimes? You just put off reading a book because you don't want to have read it. You do want to have read it, but then you'll have read it and it will be over and the anticipation of reading it will be gone. So I need to just get past that and finally read this because I really want to. She does have 2 other short story collections, one of which I have read and very much enjoyed. The title I am blanking on. I will put it here on the screen. And then the last one I have not read. So I do need to get a copy of that. And then, like I said, she does have 2 nonfiction books, the first of which is The World of Rosamunde Pilcher. And this beautiful coffee table book is just pictures and little quotes from her books and just kind of little snippets about Cornwall and Scotland, and just filled with just gorgeous, gorgeous scenery and lovely, lovely quotes from all her books and short stories and all of that. So if you're a fan of Rosamunde Pilcher, definitely get a copy of this book. It's wonderful. I'm not sure if this one's still in print, but it's fairly easy to find secondhand. So if you see a copy of it, snatch it up. And then the second nonfiction book by her is Christmas with Rosamunde Pilcher. And this is just all about her Christmas traditions and photos of her life. There she is cooking or baking. She's making drop scones. So if you want a little bit of holiday Rosamunde Pilcher, then definitely pick up Christmas with Rosamunde Pilcher. And that will do it for this deep dive author spotlight into Rosamunde Pilcher. I hope you enjoyed seeing my collection of her books and learning a little bit about her. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, I do have one additional announcement to make, and that is that I am going to be doing a read along on my channel of Coming Home. As I said, I have not reread this book, and it is the only one of her 4 novels that I have not reread. I absolutely adored this book when I first read it, and I am so excited to revisit it, and I hope that some of you will want to come along with me. Now, this book is a chunkster, so we are going to read this over April and May. So we'll read the first half of Coming Home in April and then the second half in May and do a wrap up. I will have some live streams. We will also do some reading sprints throughout those 2 months so that we can get in some dedicated time to reading Coming Home. More details will be coming about the read-along in March, but I just wanted to announce it here. So if you are interested in reading along or rereading with me, get yourself a copy of Coming Home or pull out your copy or check your library for it. But I hope you will join me. I think it is a wonderful book to read in the springtime. And yes, I hope you enjoy coming along with me as we follow Judith Dunbar's story in this fantastic coming of age family saga, just fantastic novel. And I would love to chat with all of you in the comments. Tell me your favorite Rosamunde Pilcher book. Which one of her books just speaks to you the most? I mean, of her 4 chunksters, I have to say The Shell Seekers holds a special place in my heart because it was the first book of hers that I read. And then it really is a toss-up between Coming Home and Winter Solstice as to which of these is, you know, a very, very close second. And then September is just right behind that. But I'd love to know which of her books are your favorite, or do you have a favorite of her shorter novels or her short story collections? Let's talk all things Rosamunde Pilcher down in the comments below. I do hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button and also that hype button if you're on the YouTube mobile app. And if you're new here and you'd like to see more author spotlights, book recommendations, reading wrap-ups, all that good stuff, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and join my cozy bookish community. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for all of your lovely comments on all of my recent videos. Thank you to those of you who hit that super thanks button on my last few videos. I so appreciate the extra support. And as always, I'll be back with another video very soon. But until then, I wish you a good book and a warm cuppa. Bye!